I have seen some of the many babies who were saved because of that life-saving intervention. I call him whenever I have a conflicted mom wavering between abortion or choosing life with medical concerns, and he always picks up and always speaks to those women for free.
Throughout history, whenever great injustices existed, youth movements have risen up to combat and end those injustices.
You have organizations out there like the Center for Bioethical Reform,
the Center for Bioethical Reform,
Canadian Center for Bioethical Reform,
organizations like the Center for Bioethical Reform to receive public funds when they then use to attack a woman's right to choose.
Abortion kills all kinds of people, so then all kinds of people can join the pro-life movement to save these babies.
I was talking to a young man on the streets of Toronto.
I spoke with a woman named Lucy about abortion.
Today we were doing choice chain in downtown Regina.
By the end of the conversation, she was completely pro-life.
He then walked away 100% pro-life.
Completely pro-life.
We should remember that each of those babies that die every day in Canada not only have the right to life that's being violated, they also have the right to our defense.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Pro-Life Guys podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, it's one of the things I say every time, and we are truly grateful. That opening quote, I don't actually know who said it. I think it was a person on the internet, but that quote was said about the guest that we are having on the podcast today, Dr. Matthew Harrison, and we are going to be talking about the abortion pill reversal process, which is, wow, it's just a phenomenal thing that we're going to be talking about. But before we get into that, my name is Peter, host of the show, and with me once again is my wonderful co-host, Cameron Cote. Hello, sir.
Hey, Peter. Good to be back, and I'm excited for this interview because with the abortion pill being prescribed more and more in Canada and indeed around the world, I think that it's so important to have this content on here because there are a ton of mothers and fathers for whom this will be incredibly relevant. I've already spoken with several mothers who have been in these positions and been able to refer them towards the abortion pill reversal network, their website and their 24-hour helpline. And these guys are regular features at pro-life medical conferences in Canada, and I know that they are around the world as well. So I'm really excited to have Dr. Matthew Harrison joining the show. Really fired up for it.
Yeah, likewise. Before we get into that conversation, we just have a few things here. Number one, do become a patron of the Pro-Life Guys podcast on Patreon, patreon.com/Pro-Life Guys. Join the movement. Help us out, financially partner with us so that we can continue equipping pro-lifers to be knowledgeable about the abortion wars and to know how to have good and effective and winsome conversations about abortion. This abortion topic, it's really, really important to continually remind ourselves it deals with real lives and it deals with real deaths. I mean, we are talking about the intentional destruction of preborn children in the womb, 300 a day in Canada, several thousand in the United States, and wherever you might be living. Hopefully abortion's illegal where you are, but for most of the world, abortions are happening. And so we need to be pro-lifers, we need to be Christians, we need to be people who know how to effectively and winsomely have good conversations. That's what we want to do on the podcast. And you can help us and you can join us in this mission by being a patron, patreon.com/pro-life guys. Another cool thing, you get some cool merch. So check it out. We also have a few other series you can find on your favorite podcast catcher or YouTube. Humans of the Pro-Life Movement seeks to highlight some of the unsung heroes of the pro-life movement doing what they can on the streets and wherever they might be, saving lives and changing minds. And The Pulse, where we talk about interesting and important abortion-related news from a pro-life perspective. We want to tell our own stories. So check it out, YouTube and your favorite podcast catcher. One other thing before I introduce the guest as well. We just finished, I think this was 2 weeks ago now, our series, which is a two-part series on Ireland's pro-life movement. We had a good conversation with Niamh Ivrion and Jonathan Van Maren about how the Irish pro-life movement saved over 250,000 preborn children. It is a phenomenal story, so go check it out. But one of the things we said was whoever writes a review is going to go into a draw. We're going to select a name from that draw very randomly, and that person will win a signed copy of Patriots, the Untold Story of Ireland's Pro-Life Movement by Jonathan Van Maren. And our winner today is none other than Father Selva Rigo from Ottawa, Ontario. Congratulations, sir. This is what he wrote. We're very grateful for it. The podcast helped me to wake up and do something. This podcast is helping me to learn how to face the injustice of abortion. Week by week, I'm assimilating new skills, anecdotes, and facts for conversations that I'm sharing with family and friends. It is also very encouraging to see the larger picture, that there is a community of committed people doing good and smart work to defend the most vulnerable. Thank you, sir. And we'll reach out to you, and you could reach out to us as well to get your address so we could ship that out to you as soon as possible. And now, without further ado, our guest, Dr. Matthew Harrison. Dr. Harrison is the Associate Medical Director of Abortion Pill Rescue and was one of the pioneers of the abortion pill reversal method or the emergency abortion pill reversal kit. And this reversal really is fundamental to saving the lives of preborn children, and you were going to hear more about that in just a minute. He serves as a medical advisor to Priests for Life and is the medical director of the Student Health Clinic at Belmont Abbey College, as well as an instructor at Campbell School of Osteopathic Medicine. He and his wife, Kathleen, have 7 children and reside in North Carolina. All right, everyone. Cam mentioned a little bit earlier the importance of this conversation. The abortion pill is huge, especially during the pandemic with restrictions that we're facing and making it harder to go out and do things. The abortion pill is a type of abortion procedure that you can do in your own home. And a lot of people are doing it. Wherever you might be living, this is an option that abortion supporters and the abortion industry is pushing. And so listen to this episode, take notes. You might need this information. You might need to share this information with the people you talk to about abortion. It's extremely important to know, and it's extremely important for those around you to know, those who support abortion, those who are thinking about abortion, that this option of reversing the abortion pill is available. That's enough from me. Here's our conversation with Dr. Matthew Harrison. Dr. Harrison, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this format. I've done so many little short interviews, but doing a podcast is really exciting for me because it gives me time to kind of go into depth if you guys want to.
Yeah, we do. And that's one of the joys about the podcast world, in a sense, is we're not limited by, airspace or anything like that. We can just dive in and really get deep into the conversation. We want to talk with you about the abortion pill reversal process. But before we do that, we would love to get to know you a little bit. So could you share with our audience a little bit about who you are, your experience in the medical field, and so on?
Sure. So I am a family practice physician. Went to undergraduate at William & Mary in Virginia, did grad school there with a master's in biology. Then I did research at Johns Hopkins in childhood leukemia, coming up with shortened protocols for treatment. And then I did research at Duke in Alzheimer's disease, molecular genetics, looking for markers on chromosome 19. And then in grad school, I did research on what's called heat shock proteins, which are bacterial proteins. And then before medical school, I did research at the Medical College of Virginia on cannabinoid receptors in the brain, trying to identify those. So I did a lot of receptor biology. And then I went to medical school at the Medical College of Virginia, got my degree there in 1998, did my residency in Mobile, Alabama at the University of South Alabama, board certified in family practice, have done a lot of emergency room work. And I joined a practice north of Charlotte, North Carolina on the East Coast in 2001, where I did inpatient, outpatient, and obstetrics, which as a family practice doctor, you're certified to be able to do all three of those. And that's where I was doing my obstetrics when all this came about. So we actually closed our practice in 2011. And since that time, I've been a full-time hospitalist, which means I am in the hospital all day long. I work 12-hour shifts where I'm taking care of patients in the hospital setting. If they come into the emergency room and need to be admitted, if they're sick enough to be admitted, then I take care of them once they're in the hospital until they're discharged. And so that's everything from critical care work to just regular floor, anything, heart attacks, strokes, pneumonia, whatever. But then I also have a prenatal clinic where I do free care for women that essentially don't have insurance. Many of them are abortion vulnerable. In other words, they've come to us directly from the abortion clinics. I have a mobile RV unit that has an ultrasound on it that parks outside of the abortion clinic. And we offer free ultrasounds and then free medical care for women that come to us. And then we see them through their pregnancy, do lab work, do their ultrasounds, do everything for them, actually help them with job placement, housing, because a lot of them have obstacles that drove them to abortion in the first place. And so we help them with a lot of counseling, legal assistance, that type of thing. And so that's kind of where I'm doing my OB now. Then I also do some stuff with the student health center at a college. I have a nurse practitioner that works there. She does all the health care there. And then I have some mission work that I do as well. So a little bit of everything.
Wowzers. So I'm guessing you don't get a whole lot of sleep then with all those things on the go. I'll bet you're not sleeping a whole ton, but that's so cool. I mean, there's a million questions I'd love to ask you outside of this program. I did a background in molecular genetics as well, and was working on retinal progenitor cells in mice for a little bit before I got, in some ways, dragged into the pro-life movement, kicking and screaming. But with that, then, I'm curious, so obviously you've got an incredible resume when it comes to your medical background. When it comes to the role that you've in many ways taken on within the pro-life sphere of this abortion pill reversal process, and how you guys are featured at conferences, and I know that you do consultation and whatnot with different pro-life groups, and Father Frank Pavone has talked about the guidance that you and your group has offered. Did you have kind of an epiphany moment coming into the pro-life movement, or is this something that you were really raised with? Share a little bit about your journey towards the pro-life movement and your involvement in the pro-life movement, I guess.
Sure. So, I was raised in Lynchburg, Virginia. Lynchburg, Virginia is most famous for Liberty University, Jerry Falwell. So that's where most people have heard of it. Very, church-going town, very Christian town. I was raised Presbyterian in a very pro-life church. And my family was very pro-life. My mom had 5 kids, which in the 70s was a little bit much for a lot of people. She got the stares and that kind of thing. And but a big turning point for me was, right around Roe versus Wade in 1973, my mom was pregnant with her 6th child. And so she was, planning on having the 6th child. And at the same time, we're having all this national debate about abortion and a woman's right to choose and all this type of thing. Remember, this is before really the modern age of ultrasound was not being used widespread. People didn't understand what a baby looked like in utero. There's the clump of cells argument and all that type of thing. And my mom, we were all very, very excited about this sixth sibling, this next child coming into our home. And my mom went to the hospital, and unfortunately, the baby died. And Phyllis was her name, died by the umbilical cord, wrapping around her neck, unfortunately. So it crushed our family. And we had a funeral, a little memorial at the hospital chapel. And I was 8 years old, and I distinctly remember how strange it was to me that we are seeing. So this is in November of 1973, right after Roe versus Wade had been decided in January. And it's strange to me, even at that time, I was aware that some of these nurses and doctors that were crying at our funeral might have been participating in abortions in the very same hospital. And even at the age of 8, it was apparent to me that this doesn't make sense. And, how could our baby be loved and wanted and be considered a person to mourn over where other babies are just thrown away? So that was a big turning point for me. And we had several people in our church who were going to the March for Life after that. Were very involved in the pro-life movement. Miss Marilyn Fanning was a very big influence to me. And so that kind of went up through high school. I got involved, interested in medicine, went to college. William and Mary is a very liberal school. So there's a lot of, discussion about that and women's freedom to choose abortion. It didn't hit me much again until I was back in medical school. I was still staying in the medical community because I was doing research. And I met my wife, who is the biggest, I have to say, the biggest influence on me in my pro-life ministry. She's my biggest support, and I can't do any of this stuff without her backing me up and doing everything that she does behind the scenes. But she is Catholic, and she brought to me a very real realization, one, about birth control, and then also the connection to abortion. And so we got married 2 weeks before medical school. And then while I was in medical school, I started understanding about how abortion works, the different methods, and then also how birth control works and the abortifacient properties of many of the birth control medications. And so I pretty much became convinced by the end of medical school that those two were connected, could not be separated, and that I would not want to participate in that. Now, while I was in medical school in our third year, we had our clinicals, and we had the clinical part where we're learning how to do a female exam. Now, to me, that's a very, this is the first time anything like that had, come across, my training. Well, what they did was they took 180 students in our class. They went to the Planned Parenthood clinic in Richmond, Virginia, and they hired 4 women to be examined by 180 medical students. Now, they consented to this. They were paid for it. But to me, that seemed barbaric. And it did not seem, even though it's training, I understand that, it was barbaric to turn loose, 180 students that had never done an exam on 4 women. And so myself and about 3 other people refused to go. And that's probably the first time that I took this kind of big stand about, I'm not going to go to Planned Parenthood. I'm not going to be a part of that culture. And I don't think this is dignified for women. Even if they consent to this, there's got to be a better way. And there is a better way. I mean, medicine should really be an apprenticeship, not a sit, listen to lectures, and then go do. It really should be an apprenticeship like any other skill is learned. And so that's how it was historically done. And that's how it's best done now, too. So after medical school, I did go to my residency. And within the first week of my residency, I was in clinic. And a 16-year-old girl came in and wanted birth control pills. And I was like, oh, boy, here we are right at the very beginning of my training. And so I looked at her, and I could tell emotionally she was not ready for this. She's not in a good relationship. We talked about a relationship. And so I stepped out of the room. I had to really think about it. And I went back in. I said, listen, I cannot in good conscience give you a prescription for birth control because it's going to put you in a bad position, in a bad relationship. I have to, as a physician, take care of the whole person, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And I don't think that this behavior is good for you spiritually or emotionally or even physically. So I'm not going to support that. And then I had to go to my attending physician, the supervisor of the program, and say, listen, I don't feel comfortable prescribing birth control. And many doctors have been kicked out of programs for that because they essentially become very difficult to train because there's too many exceptions for them. But fortunately, my very, very liberal chairman supported me and said, you know what, you have the right to not do something that you feel morally opposed to. So he supported me through that. I ended up becoming the chief resident of our program and was able to put on other talks to our other residents and medical students about birth control, about abortion, and that type of thing. And actually, my wife and I learned the symptothermal method and some natural means of birth control for women so that we could offer that to women who needed to space or delay pregnancy. So that was kind of my background into becoming a physician and becoming a pro-life doctor. Once I got into the field, my big moment was probably meeting Flip Benham. Do you guys know Flip?
I know the name, and I listened to when you were on my colleague Jonathan Van Maren's podcast, sharing about your introduction with him and how that was really an eye opener for you. But I'd love to hear a little bit about that interaction on your end, because I know that probably some of our listeners are not familiar with him, and so love to hear a little bit about that.
Sure. Flip Benham is a street preacher and was the director of Operation Rescue back in the day where they were laying down in front of abortion clinics, getting arrested, that type of thing. And he was actually arrested in Lynchburg, spent some time in jail there. I did not know him at that time, but I had some mutual friends who knew Flip and lived across the street from us when we were in Concord, North Carolina, and I was in practice. And they said, you really need to meet Flip. And so Flip came to our house. We had dinner. Great guy, very charismatic, very personable, and funny. So we're talking. So he said, listen, here's the challenge. He said, I want to ask you a question. He said, if the devil came to you and said, okay, I'm gonna stop doing abortions. I'm gonna stop promoting abortion, and we're going to get rid of abortion altogether. But there's this one baby that has Down syndrome, that has a lot of physical challenges, development delayed. If you just give me that one baby, I will do away with abortion forever. And he said, Dr. Matt, what would you do? And I'd never been posed that question before. And that was a really, really challenging question. And I can see how it's tempting for people to say, sure, we will sacrifice one to save millions. But I told him, you know what? I can't do that. I cannot even give up one because that is not the right thing to do. And I guess maybe he was testing the waters to see where I was on the pro-life side. And that's where we are. We are not willing to give up one baby, whether people think that it's destined for poverty or destined for suffering from some physical or mental or emotional damage. Each child is created in the image of God, and we are to try to protect that and try to cherish that and respect that and give that the dignity that is inherent, not given by people, not given by the government or anyone else, but it is inherent to that person given by God.
Amen. Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's the goal, right? The goal is zero abortions with all the work we do. Now, one of the ways that people get abortions, perhaps the most convenient way, is through the abortion pill. And one of the things we wanted to talk with you about today is the abortion pill reversal that you were part of creating and pushing. So, could you share just a little bit about your interest in the abortion pill? When did you start thinking about ways to research this pill? And just how you started that journey into that particular side of things.
Sure. So in 2006, I was in my office going through a normal day, and I have relationships with several of the crisis pregnancy centers around us because we have been, seeing women to do their prenatal care. And women would call us, and the pregnancy centers would call us if they had some type of medical issue or problem. And so they called me up one day, it was before lunch, and they said, listen, we have this 19-year-old who came in here. She took the abortion pill, but she regrets it. She wants to save her baby. Is there anything we can do? And I was like, I have no idea. Send her over and, let's just see what we can do. So she sent her over, and this young lady was in the office. She came with her mother. So about 36 hours prior to this, she had taken the abortion pill. She was in a relationship with a young man that she felt she loved, and he had said that he would support her if they got pregnant. But as soon as she did get pregnant, he's like, here's $260, go get an abortion. And she had gone down to the abortion clinic alone. They didn't let her listen to the heartbeat. She was just over 7 weeks pregnant, and she took the abortion pill. And as soon as she got out in the parking lot, she regretted it. She's like, what can I do? She couldn't make herself throw up. She couldn't get rid of it. She's like, what do I do? So she went home. And for the next 24 hours, she was just crying and upset. And, her boyfriend had said, listen, if you have this baby, your parents will kick you out. You're going to have to drop out of school. You're not going to be able to get a job. Everything's going to be ruined for us. And so that was his kind of threat and fear tactic on getting her to have an abortion. So thankfully, she went to her mom, her mother is a great Christian lady. Her parents both supported her wholeheartedly and said, listen, we will do whatever we can to help you and to help our grandchild. And so they took her to the crisis pregnancy center, who called me and brought her over. And so they're like, what can you do? And I was like, I have no idea. They don't teach us this in medical school. But I'd done ER work. And I think that with a pro-life mentality and with a problem-solving type of mentality, I think God just said, listen, you can't just give up or you can't just throw in the towel. What can you do? So I literally told her, I need to just go pray about this. And I stepped out of the room and went into my little office across the hall. And I looked up the physician's desk reference. I looked up RU46. Mifepristone is the brand name of it. And to look and see how it works and understand that better. So the way it works is it's a progesterone receptor blocker. So it fills the progesterone receptor at the placenta and makes it so that the receptor does not do its job. So it's like a key that fits into a lock but does not turn the lock, does not activate the lock. And while it is fitting into the lock, it blocks other good keys from getting in there so that they can cause the progesterone receptor to do its job, which is to support the baby with a healthy placenta so that the baby can get nutrition, oxygen, and survive. So the RU46 as a progesterone blocker is pretty strong. It's actually 2 to 4 times as strong of a attacher, strong an attachment than normal progesterone is. Well, my partner in the practice, Danny Holland, was a certified NAPRO technology fertility doctor. He had gone to Pope Paul VI Institute in Nebraska, had gotten training under Dr. Thomas Hilgers for doing fertility care using progesterone and other methods of fertility treatment. And so we had great success in our office with morally acceptable means of fertility care. We had couples that had gone to fertility specialists, had done spent tens of thousands of dollars on frozen embryos and in vitro fertilization, all that kind of stuff, and could never get success. And just with proper progesterone replacement, they're able to achieve pregnancy and carry their babies to term. So we had progesterone in the office, and so I started thinking, listen, I had done all this progesterone, or I'd done all this protein receptor biology and research. I was frustrated I didn't get into medical school right out of college, and then I was frustrated the other 2 times that I applied. It wasn't until the 4th time I applied to medical school that I got in. I was like, God, what in the world are you doing? Why am I taking forever to get into medical school? And looking back on it, I'm like, you know what? Maybe I needed some more training before you went into medical school for something like this. So I had this, I had published now in paper in scientific journals on protein receptor biology. And so I figured, if we have a bad key that won't turn the lock to activate the placenta, why don't we just throw in a bunch of good keys? We'll flood the system with good keys, because I know that RU46 is always in a state of flux. There are very few receptors that stick on and never come off. They will go on and off in a very dynamic way in real life. And so I knew that there's times that RU46 is on the receptor and other times that it's off. It's like if we throw in a bunch of extra good keys, then we have a better chance of flooding the system with good progesterone that's going to outcompete the RU46, going to activate the receptor. Now, RU46 has a half-life of about 18 to 25 hours. So essentially in a day, half of the chemical is out of your body. You've processed it. In another in another 24 hours, another half of it's out. So in about 72 hours, RU46 is pretty much out of your system and not going to have any more effect. So the important aspect was to try to get progesterone into the patient as soon as possible. So when she came into the office, we did an ultrasound and we could see a heartbeat. And I decided, if it's okay with you, why don't we give you extra progesterone? Now, progesterone's FDA approved for fertility treatments and has been used in women for probably close to 50 years in fertility treatments and in other forms of medical therapy. And so, there are some risks. Mainly, the main risk is side effects. Your arm gets sore or wherever you take it, or we give it in the buttocks, in a muscle in the buttocks, and that site gets sore. But there are essentially theoretical risks of clots and other problems. So I explained all this to the patient, and she said, absolutely, I want to take this. I want to do whatever I can to save my baby. So we did it. We gave her a 200 milligram injection of progesterone, and this is on a Thursday, I believe. So the next day, she started bleeding. And we're like, oh no, well, we figured it's probably not going to work. So I said, go to the emergency room. We know the emergency room doctors at the hospital she's going to. Have them check you out. So she went to the emergency room, and thankfully they let her see the ultrasound, and she got to see her baby's heartbeat. And she told me later, if that was all she got to do, it would have been worth it, that she got to see her baby's heartbeat and that she had known that she had done everything she could to try to save her baby. And we see that a lot in these women who attempt to reverse and then maybe have a failure, that at least they feel like they have done something to try to save their baby and to try to help, and that's worth a lot mentally and emotionally to women. So she went, saw the heartbeat, and the doctor there thankfully said, go home and hope for the best. He could have just said, oh, it's a done deal, and called a gynecologist to come in and do a D&C. And thankfully he didn't. So she went home and came back to our office Monday, and baby still had a heartbeat. And we kept doing progesterone replacement twice a week up through 28 weeks of pregnancy. And her little girl was born in March of 2007, perfectly healthy placenta. And now she's 14. And healthy little
Praise
girl.
God.
She's the the first abortion pill reversal baby, and is still doing great. Didn't have any learning difficulties or developmental delays or anything. So that's kind of how all this started. And then from there, we got into, I got in. I was a medical advisor for Priests for Life at the time, and so I started to talk to Father Pavone about it. And so we had a few little internet interviews and a little bit of publications about it. And he was like, Matt, you need to come up with a protocol. This needs to be widespread. Of course, I'm a family practice doctor, not an obstetrician. And, there's a lot of fear there of, is anybody going to believe me? Was this just a coincidence? Or is this something that is really scientifically sound and safe? And so those were all important questions to answer. And of course, it's not like every day someone walks into your clinic and says, hey, I want to reverse an abortion. So this is something that's going to take a lot of time. So Dr. George Delgado, 2 years after this, independently, without even knowing about mine, did the exact same thing. He reversed an abortion with someone who is in El Paso. He's in San Diego. And so he and Mary Davenport, who's an OBGYN and a pro-life doctor, great person, they said, listen, why don't we start pulling together data on this? So they published an article in 2012, in December issue of Annals of Pharmacotherapy, about, is this a possibility? And they had 6 case studies. 4 of those women, one of which was mine, had brought a baby to term and delivered, and 2 had lost their babies. So he contacted me, got permission to publish that, and that's where he and I connected. And he's the one who really started to balloon this network and start pulling in data and other physicians so that it could spread to where it is today.
Gotcha. That is incredible, and I'm sure that just the emotions that would have gone through your mind, through that woman Ashley's mind, when she realized that not only did that child have a heartbeat, but this pregnancy was actually going to come to term, and this child was going to be born. And I can only imagine what was going through your mind, just the hope and a prayer, maybe this will reverse things, and then it worked. I can only imagine how incredible that was. And something that we hear on the street all the time is, if you don't want an abortion, don't have one. And you would anticipate that with something so exciting and something that, this woman decided that she didn't want to have an abortion, everyone would celebrate this fact that if somebody didn't want to have this abortion, then there's this procedure out there that could reverse this impact. But that's probably not the response that you got from pro-choice proponents and whatnot. A quick Google scan of abortion pill reversal, you get articles from Vox and from Washington Post and the National Post here in Canada about how this is bad science, or this wasn't done well, and that people shouldn't be trying to go down this road. If once you take the first pill, it's guaranteed that your abortion is going to happen. What has it been like, kind of responding to some of those challenges that the abortion industry is throwing back at you? That in some ways, I would say that, 4 out of 6, I'd love to hear about how that's developed in more recent years. But if it's 1 out of 6, if it's 1 out of 1,000 children that can be saved, like you said earlier, that we got to fight for every life. But I'd love to hear kind of how that journey has gone once this kind of became more public, and that there was a viable option for reversing the abortion pill that is now being relied upon more and more heavily by abortion providers around the world, I think. And what's that journey been like since that kind of initial report come out? Have you had a lot of pro-life people wanting to get in touch? Have you had some pushback from abortion advocates and agencies like NARAL? What has that been like for you?
Yeah, so it was very surprising to me within the first couple of years when I started to get calls from people and doctors in Australia and other places. They're saying, how did you do this, and what protocol did you use, and how are the things going? It was probably 4 or 5 years before I personally actually had another patient who I directed their reversal for. And the only reason that happened was just because I happened to be involved in a lot of pro-life ministries. And so I have those connections with abortion vulnerable women. So, yeah, I got a lot of pushback. And of course, I get a lot of pushback at the abortion clinic too, because I still will go and just pray at the abortion clinics. Will offer help to women. I'm not yelling and screaming and being, a crazy person at the abortion clinic. I'm there to, help and to offer a hand. But I still get people who want to argue with me, people who are not scientists or doctors or medical at all, who want to argue with me about whether or not this works. And so, yeah, I got a lot of pushback. And what's been interesting is the number of people and the number of times I've heard of abortionists or other people who say that, well, no, this actually does make logical, biological sense. And we've even had some professors and doctors say, well, if my daughter was poisoned with an abortion pill to get rid of an unwanted baby, if she wanted to keep her baby, I'd give them progesterone. So, we've heard some of that. And I've actually had some abortionists I've heard that have actually done abortion reversals using progesterone. So I've been a little bit more shocked at the support from some of the, but that's been very sparse. And the vast majority of people that are in the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, have come out saying that this is all junk science and that this is, stuff that doesn't work. Dr. Richard Kreinen had put out an article or had put out a paper just about a year ago. It's very interesting. He had decided he was going to prove that abortion pill reversal didn't work. So they came up with a study that was going to include 40 women. There's only 12 women who ended up enrolling in it. And these women all had received the abortion pill. And so 6 of them were given a placebo, and 6 of them were given progesterone pills, according to our protocol. One woman from each group just dropped out and said they didn't want to continue it. So we have 5 and 5 now. So of the women that were left in the study, one of the women from the reversal group had bleeding at home, and she called an ambulance and was taken to the hospital. Her abortion completed at home at the emergency room. She didn't require transfusion or surgery or anything. And she was essentially a woman who had the abortion at home, was scared about the bleeding, called an ambulance, and they took her to the hospital. I'm not sure how it is in Canada, but in America, if you call an ambulance and they come to your house, you're pretty much going to get a ride to the emergency room, unless it's obvious that there's nothing wrong. So she went, and she didn't require any further care. The other 2 women that had serious bleeding were both in the placebo arm of the study. They had received RE46, but had not received Cytotec, had not received the medicine that causes labor. Both of those women had serious bleeding. They went to the emergency room. One woman needed a transfusion, and they needed essentially a DNC or a surgery, So the 2 women that had serious bleeding that really needed medical attention did not get the reversal. The one woman who did get the reversal that bled just had essentially a normal abortion. The other interesting, which they don't really tell about these details when they put in the press, study on abortion pill reversal is halted due to safety concerns. It makes it sound like the concern was with the reversal, but it wasn't. The other interesting thing is that 4 of the 5 women who had received progesterone had living babies at 2 weeks.
Oh.
So essentially, 80% of the reversals worked. which is actually better than our numbers. Our numbers went up to 68%. So this guy who sets out to prove us wrong, if anything, proved us right. Now, unfortunately, part of his deal with these women was, if your baby survives, I'll surgically abort them, which he did.
Yeah.
So the 4 babies that survived the abortion pill by using our process were then aborted surgically. So, this is kind of how the abortion industry works. Is they went to prove us wrong, they ended up proving us right, and then they used the media to try to smear abortion pill reversal. And of course, they also don't mention that Dr. Richard Kreinen is a paid medical consultant for the only company that makes RU46. So there's a little bit of a
prejudice,
little prejudice, little conflict of interest there. So anyway, so we've gotten a lot of pushback from that, but but we knew it was going to be this way, and we also knew it was going to take a lot of time. Now, what's interesting is that people who know me personally know that, for one, I'm a skeptic. You've got to prove something to me. I don't jump on the bandwagon with everything. And people that know me and my work, I mean, it's funny because I've been a physician now for 20 years. I've been doing inpatient hospital work for 10 years at one main hospital. I work at about 5 different hospitals. But I do critical care work. I put in central lines. I intubate patients. I code patients. I do all the stuff that you see on the hospital TV shows of people. I don't do big surgeries. I don't do heart surgery. I don't do brain surgery. Thank goodness. But and so it's always interesting to me when someone has known me through that avenue, and that's all they've known about me. And then all of a sudden they realize, what's this about abortion pill reversal that you do? I mean, I've been working with a nurse practitioner now. There's a particular one that I've been working with for a couple of years. And she's like, Dr. Harrison, someone up on the floor just told me that you travel all over the country talking about abortion pill reversal. I was like, yeah, I do. That's what I do on the side. So, and it's funny because I think they know me from another aspect. And then when they find out about this, I think it maybe adds some credibility to the abortion pill reversal process, because they're like, oh, yeah, well, he's a good doctor other places, so this must be something real.
Bingo. Credibility. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's absolutely great. And I want to thank you so much for sharing these stories. They're absolutely fascinating. And as you were talking about the 80%, the success in your opponents getting this right, I was thinking about how shameful it was that the reversing of this RU46 procedure was successful, and yet the goal of the whole process was to end the lives of those children anyway. And so they ensured that outcome. They ensured that they arrived at that outcome by aborting those children anyway. Absolutely awful and horrific. But so one of the things about this podcast, Dr. Harrison, is we try to equip people to have really good conversations about abortion on the streets, or at work, or at school, or wherever they have conversations. And one of the ways is really, really understanding how this abortion pill reversal works. And you have been extremely, extremely insightful about that. I just have some clarifying things. I know you touched on them already, but really just to highlight them for the people who are listening who might be in conversations at some point or another where they talk about the abortion pill and those options, and they'll be able to bring some really solid facts about the abortion pill reversal to that conversation as well. So could you highlight for us at what point is too late to take the abortion pill reversal procedure, and when is it ideal? If someone takes RU46, decides to change their mind, when is ideal, and when would you say is too late to reverse this process?
Okay, so like I said, it's mentioned earlier, the abortion pill is essentially out of your system within 72 hours. So giving progesterone after 72 hours is probably not beneficial at all because it's already out of your system. Now, there are studies that we've actually did a review of study. I did a review of studies and published it in Issues of Law and Medicine with Dr. Davenport on what is the exact amount of or number of embryos that survive if you just take the abortion pill and don't take the second medicine, the misoprostol or cytotec. Those numbers come out to anywhere from 7 to 23% if you do nothing. If you take RE46, don't take the second pill, and don't take progesterone. So anywhere from 7 to 23%. Our studies show that if you take progesterone replacement, you're going to, on average, our numbers were 48%. But if you but that includes a lot of women who didn't take it properly. So if you take it properly by the book, 64 to 68% success rate. So quite a big jump from 7 to 23%. So it's definitely effective. It seems like now initially RE46 was said that you could it was FDA approved in the year 2000 to take up through the first 7 weeks of pregnancy. Okay, I'm sorry, 8 weeks of pregnancy, and so that's what. But they found that they started using it off label, and they were using it up to 10 weeks or 70 days pregnancy. That's one of the funny things that they always argue with me about is, you can't use progesterone. That's off label. You can't use progesterone to reverse an abortion. There's no FDA approved. And I said, well, the abortion industry did that with RU46 itself for about 16 years before it was FDA approved up to 70 days. And so we've found that the earlier that an embryo is exposed to RU46, the deadlier it is. And so babies that are closer to the 10-week age range tend to have a better chance of survival. So we try to get progesterone into moms as soon as possible, and we always try to verify a heartbeat. One thing that we want to make sure of is that the baby is in the uterus. Okay, so we want to first make sure that a baby is not an ectopic pregnancy in a fallopian tube or outside of the uterus, because if they are, then they need to be referred to a high-risk specialist. Okay, and we know that abortion clinics are just typically famous for very, very sloppy medicine. So I've had women who have gone in and they were given RE46, and then they didn't pass. They went back. Were told that the baby was successfully evacuated. Then they come to my clinic 2 weeks later, still pregnant. And then I've delivered those babies before. Some of those women I've also heard have gone through that process and then gone back on surgical abortions. So, but to answer your question directly, we want to get the medicine into the mom as soon as possible. After 72 hours, it's probably not going to do any good, but we will give it up to 72 hours after ingestion of the pill.
Right. That's great to know. Do you know, totally really curious, do you know how many times it's been successful? Do you know how many kids are alive today because this reversal process was enacted?
Yeah, so I just contacted Heartbeat International. Heartbeat International in 2016 took over our call center because it was getting too big and too busy. And Heartbeat International, one reason we wanted to work with them was because they have over 2,500 pregnancy care centers that they're associated with around the world, and they're in a bunch of countries. And so I asked them today, what are the fresh numbers? And so they let me know that we have had over 2,000 babies that have been saved by abortion pill reversal, that we have served women in 46 countries and all 50 of the United States. We have, in 2019, they give me some numbers for Canada. In 2019 in Canada, there were only 8 people that had called to ask for reversals. In 2020, there were 44. So there's been more of an increase in Canada. I actually came to Ontario and gave a talk with Alliance for Life Ontario with Jackie Jeffs and the folks over there in 2017. and found out that there were 4 providers in the Ontario area that were willing and ready to do reversals. So every month we have about 150 women that are on the protocol reversing abortions, and like we had said before, there's about a 68% success rate on reversals. So we've really been blessed with a lot of great teamwork in getting support for these moms.
So, 2 questions from my end that I'm sure kind of dovetail off of each other. If there was a pro-life physician or any physician for that matter who listened to this podcast and say, "Hey, I want to have these kits in my office, in my hospital, wherever," as you said, in Canada, it's still a fairly small number of physicians that have um, this connected with them. How would a physician, how would a hospital, how would a clinic become a center that could have these abortion pill recovery kits available? Is that something that they contact Heartbeat International? How would a group get that? And then from there, how would a mother who has taken the first pill get in contact with one of these facilities, I suppose?
Sure, great question. So the easiest way is to go to abortionpillreversal.com, and there's information there. There is a non-urgent phone number for physicians and people that are wanting to get involved there. That number is 614-885-7577. And they can also go to an email address is info@apr.life and contact there.
Beautiful.
Wonderful.
That's
We're gonna
fantastic.
put these all in the show notes as well. So
Great.
for those of you who are listening, that's where that will be. Kim, you had something else. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. And so that's how people get in contact. They can go to your website. They can call those numbers for non-emergencies. So that'd be for nurses or practitioners or whomever they would be. Um, say we're on the street corner, we're talking to somebody, and they say, "Oh my goodness, I just took one of these abortion pills. Now I've come to regret that." Where's the emergency link for them? Where do they get info on where they can get this progesterone and start reversing this effect as quickly as possible? How do they do that?
Sure. So again, we have a mobile platform that they can use. It's also at abortionpillreversal.com, also at apr.com, and the toll-free number for that's manned 24/7 by nurses is 877-558-0333. And that puts them in touch with a nurse who can talk with them about their current situation, see if they're eligible for reversal. And then the nurse on the other line has a network of providers. They find out where they are geographically located and try to get them to someone that is within just essentially as close as possible. And so they contact that provider, set up a meeting time where they can go and start the reversal process as soon as possible.
Right. That is wonderful. Dr. Matt Harrison, thank you so much for not only taking the time to sharing this with us, but for the work that you have been doing in restoring life. I mean, in reversing this deadly process of the RU46 pill and doing everything you can to allow these children to live, allow their heartbeats to continue on. And you mentioned the oldest girl, I believe you said 14 years old she is right now. Is that correct?
That's correct. And so we have a whole generation now of these kids, the reversal kids are coming along. You know, there's a lot of older folks, Jenna Jensen and folks that have survived abortions who are speaking out, testifying at Congress. Just wait until these reversal babies are all of the age where they're going to start standing up. You know, we're raising a lot of warriors here that were really just at death's door, and going to become victim to it. And we have over 1,000 providers now that are ready at a moment's notice to help these mothers save their babies.
That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for that, and for all your work. And Dr. Harrison, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us on the podcast today.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for all the work that y'all are doing, spreading the pro-life work.
Thank you, sir. That is Dr. Matthew Harrison. And like I said at the beginning, that is a phenomenal conversation about some really, really great life-saving work that he's doing. I just want to reiterate one more time the contact information that he gave. For those of you who are listening, it will also be in the show notes wherever you're listening. So do check it out there. But go to www.abortionpillreversal.com, www.abortionpillreversal.com to learn more about the abortion pill reversal and perhaps to get more of your questions answered if we didn't touch on them here. You can get in contact 614-885-7577 or email info@apr.life. And as Cam as Cam referenced a little bit earlier during the conversation with the one question to Dr. Harrison, if you're a pro-life someone practicing medicine, or if you have family members who are doing that, this would be really helpful information to get to your family member, and really good for more and more medical professionals who support life to get involved with this and provide more opportunities and more clinics, as it were, across your province or nation or state or wherever it might be, to make this abortion pill reversal procedure as widely available and as well known as possible. So get the word out there. This is extremely, extremely important. There are children alive today because the abortion pill was reversed, and you can be part of that life-saving work as well. Cam, as we wrap this up, do you have one thing that you would like to say to our listeners?
I got three things I want to say to our listeners.
Beauty, man. Beauty.
So I will give, obviously we always have the same challenge at the end. Have conversations with people. Use these skills in your conversations. Do that with your friends, family, coworkers, anybody in your community. Two other things, though, that I want to mention and encourage you to be a part of. We recently launched our online engagement team of people who are getting some training from myself and the rest of the CCBR team, and are engaging more and more in online conversations. Maybe you're a Twitter troll already. Maybe you don't like the terminology troll because you're trying to do good, godly work on Twitter and you want something better than troll. If you are actively engaged in online conversations or want to be, please join our team. We're going to be giving you a ton of tips and tools for how to have productive conversations with people online. And not only that, third thing that I want to encourage you to consider, we are coming into our better weather months. Hopefully, COVID will continue to scale down. Lockdowns will continue to decrease. We want to bring a team of activists to your community. Obviously, sometimes that's impossible. If you live in Antarctica, it might take us a little while to get down there. But if you live somewhere in Canada, if you live even somewhere close to Canada, and you want to have either Peter or myself come and do a talk for you and your community, or if you want one of our internship teams to come and help you guys out doing some activism, hit us up, let us know, email us at email@endthekilling.ca. It'll come on to me, and I'll be the fellow that gets to respond to you. So if you want to talk, if you want a weekend conference, if you want our internship team to come to your community, please reach out to us. Our whole mission is to change minds, save lives, and transform our culture. And that involves giving you more in-depth training and training the people in your pro-life community. So those three things: have conversations, join our online team, and reach out to us to get us into your home community. We would love to visit you.
We also do talks elsewhere as well, other than Canada. Unfortunately, it's very, very difficult for us to get there at this point because of the restrictions and just getting back into the country and all of that. So, yeah, Cam.
Yeah, on the flip side, though, because everyone is doing virtual presentations anyways, this is really convenient. I am training a guy in the UK right now every Thursday morning. He is working full-time in the movement and is looking to take on more and more leadership. And so I'm kind of mentoring him every Thursday morning. Shout out to you, James. You're awesome. I've also worked with folks in the States. I literally just got off the call with a guy from Ecuador. And so this might be a golden opportunity. If your conference has to be online anyways, if your school, if your church is doing online content, and you say, you know what, we might not be able to cover travel expenses for a guy to fly across the pond and give us a 2-hour workshop, but hey, we're doing virtual presentations anyways. A virtual presentation from somebody who lives next door is no different than a virtual presentation from me who lives a long ways away. And so if you want one of us, or if you want one of our colleagues who are much better looking to give a presentation, please don't hesitate to reach out. Now's the time. I totally wanted to end that infomercial style of like, if you call in the next 15 minutes, but definitely just reach out to us.
Sweet. Awesome. Thank you, Cam. And thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. We hope you tune in again next week.